Hello there, it's now time for your market news. An incredibly busy day in the calendar, both economically and politically. And when we take a look at the all-share index, it's currently up at 0.9%. It's sitting at 93,593. And the rand has firmed up quite nicely today. We will find out from our market analyst a little short while about what's driving the rand. That's currently sitting at 17 rands 86 to the US dollar and at 20 rands 28 to the euro, and it is sitting at 24 rands to the pound. A quick look at our commodities. Gold currently sitting at 3,312. Platinum is down at 1,046, but the price of Brent crude oil is still steady at $65.66 a barrel. Chantal, Marx is the head of investment and research and content at F&B Wealth Investments, and she's our market commentator for today. Chantal, always a great pleasure speaking to you. What a busy day. What a busy day. The budget, Washington, multi-choice. It's been such quite a thing to get everything prepared. But let's start first with the budget. In just under an hour, the minister's going to be taken to the podium. No doubt the market will be waiting to hear, particularly where that 75 billion rand gap is created by that VAT removal will come from. What options do you think Treasury may play around with, especially because there's so much talk? I heard Nompu speaking to an analyst there about wealth tax, about sin tax also being played around with. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think that there is much room on the taxation side. I think where the room to adjust is on the expenditure side. So if we look at what the VAT hike was going to fund in the first place, it was an increase in funding on education and healthcare, social grants and wages in the public sector in the main. So we'll have to play around with where we give and take around filling that specific gap. I think where it's probably more palatable is to look at perhaps altering the wage increase assumptions for the public sector.
Okay.
But I think that in itself can cause a lot of issues as well.
It can, because I've been listening to opposition parties who are vehemently opposed to an austerity budget and what that would mean. And the indicators could be for the market looking out to suggest a change in fiscal policy. Do you see that happening?
So I think that the Treasury needs to focus on productive spending and on increases in productive spending, because that won't be an austere budget. But it's very difficult for them to not cut somewhere, because we can't really take on a lot more debt. We don't want fiscal slippage in South Africa, because we want to also appease credit rating agencies.
Yes.
We want to keep our borrowing costs low, and we want to make a dent in our borrowings that we have so far. So it's a tightrope that they need to walk, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they end up doing here.
Yeah, the IMF had also mentioned about the borrowing part, that it does see that government debt to GDP could reach about 80% at some point. Do you think we might get a surprise number jump out at us this afternoon?
So that's always the risk, right? I think if an agreement wasn't reached on where the spending cuts will come from, then you'll have to up your borrowing, and you also have to take into account that economic growth so far this year has disappointed. At least the high frequency data prints have disappointed so far. I'm speaking specifically about the manufacturing and the mining sector that is likely to detract from GDP growth in the first quarter and could have a knock-on impact beyond that. We also have a confidence crisis worldwide because of the uncertainty that we are facing from a US policy direction, and that has a knock-on impact on economic growth. So growth forecasts will likely be lowered in this budget relative to the first and the second versions, and that will also have an impact on revenue assumptions and ultimately on government debt to GDP.
Yeah, let's turn attention to the rand at 17 rands 86. One could be forgiven to think that could it be something to do with the budget coming, or is it something happening with what's happening in Washington, dollar strength? What are you reading into the changes in the currency?
Yes, I mean the currency is slightly stronger today, but it's nothing like the move that we saw yesterday, for example. But it's still strengthening against the US dollar. But if you look at the rand relative to some of the other major currencies, the pound and the euro notably, the rand is actually slightly weaker against those crosses. So that means that the rand strength we're seeing today is probably more a function of dollar weakness than anything else. The weakness against the other two currencies could be a bit of a catch-up player because the rand has outperformed over the last few days. But there also, I think rightly so, must be some nerves around what's going to be in Budget 3.0 and what is going to happen in the Oval Office early this evening.
Yeah, there is that crucial 17:30 meeting that's taking place in Central African time in Washington later this afternoon. But simultaneously, there's also that meeting that's happening with the Deputy President also who's in France. And I'm trying to link that with what the announcement that was made by Canal Plus and MultiChoice that the Canal will be taking over MultiChoice. Give me your thoughts on the MultiChoice takeover and your thoughts also on the Washington meeting at 17:30 this afternoon.
So the Canal Plus multi-choice story, I think, is quite interesting, and it does show a softening on the part of the Competition Commission, which I think is quite interesting if you consider that they've been taken a very hard line on mergers of this sort of nature and of this size over the last few years. So perhaps the softening could open up the gap to additional foreign direct investment in South Africa, which I think will be quite positive. For MultiChoice and Canal Plus, both companies were struggling with go forward momentum. MultiChoice was in a heavy investment cycle with Showmax, and the businesses on the African continent in particular are very complementary to one another, with MultiChoice being in English-speaking regions and Canal Plus in French-speaking regions. So I think that combined entity makes really good sense. They've committed to investing quite a bit of money into the entertainment and sports industries in South Africa. And hopefully that foreign direct investment will actually spur growth in that arena. I think from an Oval Office perspective, it doesn't necessarily have much bearing, but you could tie it into a possible Starlink entry into South Africa, perhaps a softening on the regulatory front, aiding Mr. Elon Musk as well.
Yeah, and just in a few seconds, your thoughts of the meeting, the crucial meeting this evening or early this evening.
Yeah, I mean, so we are hoping for a good outcome from a South African perspective. We don't want to see a Zelensky type moment. Hopefully, cool heads prevail, and we can get some idea of what the trade relationship between South Africa and the US could look like going forward, and hopefully a calming of some of the kind of inflammatory rhetoric that we've had around our country after this meeting.
Chantal, thank you so much. I would have loved for us to touch on all the other data that's out. We have inflation figures that you may have seen in our bulletin. Inflation has gone up by 2.8% from 2.7%. And we also have retail sales figures. We also have some company news, but we'll get to that maybe tomorrow. Chantal, thank you so much for your time.